The Major Spoilers podcast covers news, reviews, and of course, spoilers, and goes into details about the topics discussed. So if you haven't read, listened, or watched the items we talk about, you might want to come back later.
I'm Matthew.
I'm Rodrigo.
And I'm Steven, and you're listening to the Major Spoilers podcast, the podcast for pop culture and comic fans.
In this issue, almost 100 issues in, and the Birds of Prey finally get a name. Riverdale gets suspenseful. Zatanna gets an unexpected visit. Suzette makes tiramisu, and the existential dread kicks in. That's not the comics so much as it is all of our lives in 2024. But Major Spoilers rallies where the others falter, bringing our capes, mascaras, and that utility belt that Steven never takes off to show you the latest in pop culture. So set them up and knock them down. The Major Spoilers podcast is on the air.
Welcome to issue 1085 of the Major Spoilers podcast. Thank you so much for downloading and checking us out this week. The gang is all back this week, and I was wondering, as we get into the rest of the show, what you guys watching? Rodrigo, what are you watching on the TVs or the streamings or the mobile devices?
Yeah, I'm very slowly getting through Spy Family, aka Spy X Family.
This is not the Spy Kids thing from Robert Rodriguez?
It is not.
Okay.
It is a Japanese anime from Japan. And yep. And it is the story of a secret agent that needs to go undercover as a family man to basically get close to a target. And in order to do that, he basically needs to get like a fake daughter and a fake wife. And
okay.
Yeah. So, but as it turns out, none of these characters start out affiliated with each other, but the wife is an assassin who also conveniently needs a family cover. And the daughter is psychic, which is basically the driving point of the show, because the two, like the secret agent and the assassin, don't know that the other one's a secret agent and an assassin. They don't know who they're working for, but the girl can hear both of their thoughts. So the only character who knows everything that's going on is the little girl. But unlike a lot of other shows and comics or whatever, she's written like a little girl. So she doesn't know what to do with that information, and often ends up like misbehaving in weird ways because she doesn't understand what's happening. So it's like, it's a very unusual show, but it's really cute. It's really sweet. And has a lot of like really wacky characters. So part of the reason why I'm moving through it so slowly is because I'm watching it with my wife, and our schedules don't always align. And also sometimes, my wife is like hard line subs only. She doesn't like dubs.
Oh, right.
So we're watching it in Japanese with English subtitles, which means if either of us can't read at that moment, either because we're too tired or because I've had a migraine and I can't deal with it, like we can't just casually watch it. So it has to be like a deliberate, we're sitting down, we're watching like 2 episodes of Spy Family. We need to pay attention because we don't speak Japanese. And then that's that. So a block of time like that doesn't manifest a lot. So we're, I don't know, maybe like 6 episodes in, I don't know, the whole season. So
cool. Matthew, what about you? What are you watching?
Well, the kid is back from college, or has been back from college for the last couple of months. So we have been slowly churning through House MD, which they just absolutely love to death. And I stopped watching House in about season 5. We're right now in season 7. And I kind of regret dropping the show back in 2014 because it actually got better, and it got past. There was a series of very horrific, drudgery episodes.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was a really lovely set that had Lin-Manuel Miranda. Didn't remember that. But young Lin was in there for a while. And of course,
before he got big. Yeah.
And there's this whole sequence right now that's going on where Olivia Wilde has been gone for half a season to go make Cowboys versus Aliens. So that will tell you when this took place. but we're now at the point where the character is back and it's having these big storytelling moments. And I'm really mad because the child is about to go back to school and I'm going to be on hold for another 4 months. But at least I can watch season 4 of The Boys, which is just disgusting me on all fronts. Just horrifying, horrifying show. Someone should be ashamed, and I hope to get in another episode tomorrow night. So,
All right, there you go. I just completed a watch through or rewatch of Star Wars Rebels. It's
really,
been
isn't it like 900 episodes?
No. You're thinking of Clone Wars. Star Wars Rebels only went 4 seasons, although the problem was that they spread them out quite a bit because there were some questions of, is this coming back? Is this not coming back? There's time jumps between seasons. And so I think that also makes people think that it's longer than it is. And of course, the heir apparent to Star Wars Rebels is Ahsoka, because we need to go and find what happened to Bridger at the end of Rebels. So I made through all 4 seasons watching about, on days where I'm literally not doing anything, watching about 6 episodes. They're only like 20, 30 minutes a piece, 6 episodes at a stretch. So I was able to get through it in the last couple of weeks. And that is a really solid show. That really feels like everybody was hitting on all cylinders. They're coming off the high of Clone Wars. You've got the Star Wars movies that are in place. They're bringing back old characters that were, essentially prequel characters, things that happened in Clone War characters. It was just a really well done show. There are some episodes that I thought dragged, but overall, the big story arcs that they play in that show are great. And they really set up a lot of what we're seeing in a lot of the modern or the more recent Star Wars stuff. So really got a kick out of that. I'm glad I said, hey, I want to watch this again, and watched it all the way through. There was a lot of stuff that I had forgotten too. So that was nice to revisit that. So
are you going to now go back and rewatch Ahsoka?
I'm thinking of watching Ahsoka. Yeah, I'm thinking of going back and watching Ahsoka for that. Although I will say that Ahsoka does a really good job of bringing in the big things that people remember from Rebels, the Bridger and I forgot what her name is now. The
Hera?
Mandalorian. No. Hera was in there. Yes. Dealing with the fact that they have a kid that was kind of brought up at the end of that. But Space Whales and Thrawn and all that stuff. I forgot that Thrawn played. I thought Thrawn was just a season 4 character, but he was in there for like a couple of seasons. So that was interesting to see all of that. I really enjoyed the Maul storyline, rewatching that again. More than anything, I think, Rodrigo, Star Wars Rebels makes me want to go back and watch Solo, the movie.
Really?
Yeah.
It references it?
Well, yeah, because Maul, at the end of the big bad leader of the Black Sun or whatever it was revealed to be Maul. And so somewhere between Solo and Rebels, Maul has his downfall, and he becomes this kind of decrepit old man who's madly searching for Obi-Wan Kenobi to kind of end. He wants to end it. He either wants to end Kenobi or have Kenobi end him. And so that is this driving story that you don't realize until the last moment. And then
that's cool.
It's like, oh, okay, well, we saw, Maul get sliced in half in Phantom Menace. And then we saw him come back as a robotic, bottom half robotic creature in Clone Wars. Then we see him in Solo, and then we see him again in Rebels. And I like that follow through of these really minor. I wouldn't say Maul is a minor character, but even Saul Guerrera. Yeah, Saul Guerrera. I think he is also a fascinating character to watch too, because he also evolves from Clone Wars to Rebels to Rogue One, and you really get his entire story in those places that you really don't see in other formats, and I dig that as well. So I just like that interconnectedness when they really put thought into those minor characters. So
Sabine Wren, I think.
Yeah, that's who it is, Sabine Wren. And then the whole Mandalorian arc, right? Even in the Clone Wars with the fall of Mandalore, and then that's a big plot in Rebels, and then Ahsoka, and then Mandalorian season 1 and 2, right? It's really cool. So yeah, listeners, what are you watching? Join us over on our Major Spoilers Discord server. You can share your thoughts on your programming that you're watching, or just reactions to the programs that we're watching. And don't forget, it's absolutely free to join the Major Spoilers Discord. Link in the show notes. All right, let's take a look at comic books and do some reviews. Matthew, you are going to kick us off this week with a new comic last week from Archie Comics.
Correct. Andamendo. Chilling Adventures presents Truth or Dare. Now, here is the thing, and this is absolutely true. When I picked this issue, I didn't know it was an Archie comic. I looked at the cover. I looked at the art. It's a blood-splattered cover with a really kind of a cool logo, and I thought, is that a Zenescope title? And then I read it, and I'm like, oh, well, I definitely want to check this out. Written by Ron Robbins, art by Laura Braga. Truth or Dare is the story of a new kid in town in Riverdale. Do you guys remember Trula Twyst?
She's one of those witches peoples.
No, actually. She is a girl from like 97. Okay, so Jughead notoriously is not interested in women.
Right.
Jughead, not only at a certain point in his time, was not only not interested in women, but wanted to get the rest of the male members of the Archie gang, your Reggies and your Archies and your Mooses, away from their girls. Trula Twyst showed up and used psychology against him. So she basically followed Jughead around and described his behavior, figured out his personality traits, and then started manipulating poor Juggy, messing with Jug's head, if you will, and going through this whole thing where it turns out she's into Jughead. So Trula Twyst is actually one of the rare Jughead love interests in what I consider the prime Archie universe. This is not that. This is a book that doesn't seem to take place in any of the known continuities.
It's in the Chilling Adventures
right
series, so it's the spooky stuff.
Veronica's not a vampire, and Archie's not a werewolf, and Jughead is not fighting the Predator. But I kind of love how this book starts out, because it starts out as kind of, oh, here's the new kid in town, 90210 style. And we're introduced to the little cliques in Riverdale, and we get to see, oh, Archie and Veronica are back together. That's Chuck and Cassie Cloud. And of course, that's Cheryl Blossom and her girlfriend Tony and her brother Jason. They're inseparable. And of course, Betty always hangs out with Kevin Keller, and that's Moose and his girlfriend. And we go through the whole litany as though, if you've never read an Archie comic and you don't know who these kids are, this book will tell you. If you've only read, or rather, if you've only watched Riverdale on television, first of all, you're going to be really comfortable here, because this is definitely Zach and or Cody Jughead. I don't know which, and honestly, no one can tell me, so it's fine. But things get weird when Trula meets all the new friends and starts talking about the new friends. And then we find that she has a stalker montage in her bedroom with a red string going from people to people and a big heart around Jughead. And she invites all the kids over for a rager at her adoptive parents' house, or I guess her foster parents' house. They're super rich. So some kids end up in the recording studio, and some kids end up in the library, and some kids end up in the guest room where they have a makeout pit, and then all the doors lock, and then you hear over the thing, "We got to play a game." And so Trula then forces these little cliques and groups to admit terrible things or take terrible consequences. And that's the point where I kind of go, what? So the remainder of the issue is really Jughead trying to figure out who this girl is. By the way, she holds a knife to Midge's throat. That should tell you right there that Archie comics in the year 2024 are not what they were in the year 1985 when I was reading them in, the little digests. But it gets even stranger, because when the plot, the big overarching secret plot, which has elements of, I don't know if you guys have ever seen Escape Room and the sequel, Escape Room Tournament of Champions.
Mm-mm.
No? Okay. Or the Saw films, or all of these movies where people have to go through these terrible, murder hobo things to live, we do have a resolution. And on the very last page, we find that Trula has been sent to the Riverdale Asylum, and her doctor is Mad Dr. Doom, the supervillain from the pages of Captain Hero in 1966. So here's what I want you to know about Truth or Dare. A, I hope there's more, which is a good thing. B, I wish there had been more, which is a little less of a good thing. The thing about the Chilling Adventures one-shots that have been so much fun is knowing kind of who these characters are, having these archetypes in these situations that a lot of times are drawn from other stories or archetypical stories, mythology, movies, all sorts of things. Madam Satan coming back is a pure universal horror movie. And then we have the gothic horror of Sabrina during her thing, and then we have the Wes Craven zombie Archie. This is really kind of a 2010s horror movie, Archie, but it doesn't have enough space in this issue to get really to the point where you get to, remake of Carrie levels of telekinetic hit girl, or even the point where, in Escape Room, somebody dies horribly, but if you didn't see a body, they're probably not actually dead. I'm going to give it 3.5 slices of meatloaf because it's good for what we get. I definitely want more of this if I can get it. But I also feel like the concept as described in the solicitation copy really doesn't get the time to be fleshed out the way I would have wanted it to be.
Yep, there you go. Chilling Adventures presents Truth or Dare. So this is a one-shot, unless it goes really off the rails and becomes super crazy, then you probably aren't going to get more of this particular story. You might get more of this character in another place. The other thing that I've been thinking about over the last couple of years when they've been doing this Chilling Adventures series, because there's Chilling Adventures Presents, and then there is another one, Sabrina's Chilling Adventures of Sabrina Presents, is that you kind of need to treat those as kind of what if stories. So they're not set in the same. They're not set in the same universe. So the one where Veronica's a werewolf and Betty is the bride of Frankenstein or whatever. You just kind of have to treat them as what if kind of things.
Betty
so kind of
is
keep
the
that
Frankenstein. I think that Cheryl Blossom was the bride of Frankenstein.
Yeah, there you go. So kind of keep that in mind, and that kind of ties in to my review this week, and also a little something that we did this week in the Major Spoilers Podcast pre-show, where we are talking about different takes and ideas on characters. So Chilling Adventures Presents is one way that we can present ideas or present characters in fresh, exciting ways. And DC Comics is doing the same thing with its Black Label series, as they tell different stories of these characters, usually with more adult themes. Although I will say Zatanna Brings Down the House, number 2, from Mariko Tamaki and Javier Rodriguez, is not as over the top as I thought it would be. But it is still kind of a little bit of adult. This is a different take on who the character of Zatanna is. She is a kid that from issue 1, we learned that she only does tricks. She doesn't do real magic, because one time when she was a little girl, she was being bullied and she did real magic and made a kid disappear. And then we find out in issue 2, when her father, Zatanna, attempted to fix the problem and bring the kid back from wherever Zatanna sent him to, that she may have been responsible for his death/disappearance. And so for her entire life, she's been someone who is interested in magic, but she only does tricks, not real magic. And so we find Zatanna working in Las Vegas at like the lowest rated F-tier casino, doing shows for minimum wage and just having an okay life and living it. But there's a person who keeps coming to the show, a woman sitting in the audience, and there's only like 15 or 20 people that ever show up to any of Zatanna's shows. But she comes back again and again and again until finally Zatanna confronts the woman in the middle of the show. And it turns out that not only is this possibly this take on the Phantom Stranger, because they do call this woman Stranger, and she has white eyes. So I'm pretty sure this is the Phantom Stranger. But we also find out that Zatanna has broken magic from when she killed Zatara or made him disappear or whatever happened all those years ago. And so now she needs to figure things out. And the Council of Mages, or the Council of Real Magicians, or I guess they're called the Casters, are telling her one story. And then she meets another possible mischievous character, not in the form of a fox that you might find in other mythologies, but in a different form. And that's kind of where issue 2 ends up. I didn't know what to expect going into this. Bring Down the House, I thought was going to be more pure magic, maybe more of a zany adventure, and knowing that it's Black Label, be a little bit more adult. Now, I'm not looking for, splash page of Zatanna naked or something, or, anything like that. But I was expecting it to be a little bit more harder, and it's kind of not. Maybe in the themes, maybe a little bit harder, but this doesn't feel like a Black Label comic. It certainly has a Black Label price at $5.99, but I wasn't expecting it to be as, I guess, light as it is. Also, because maybe it's in the Black Label, it's one of those things where they can just tell a different story and they don't have to worry about any ongoing continuity, and they can just do their own thing, which I'm totally fine with. There are some interesting bits, though. There is a moment where Zatanna is visited by another casino where they want to pay her tons of money. And when the stranger shows up, I'm just going to say the stranger and not the Phantom Stranger. But when the stranger shows up, the stranger mentions, "Hey, I already know that the Justice League came to visit you and you still said no to them." So this is kind of not quite 1970s. It's totally not 1970s. But it is totally referencing when Zatanna was part of the Justice League. The art by Javier Rodriguez is very good. I like it. I like the creatures and the monsters and the angles that are selected. I'm not a huge fan of the coloring. About half the book are dream sequences that Zatanna has. And so the colors are off, and they're also kind of more vibrant and neon than what the rest of the book is. And I kind of find that a little off-putting. Some of the colors, we did an episode of Top 5 a couple of years ago about our least favorite colors, I think. And some of the colors that are used in those dream sequences are definitely my least favorite and are borderline the kind of colors that are puke-inducing for me. So I really don't care for the coloring in the book that much. I mean, it's on par, but it's just a personal reference or preference, I think, for me. But overall, I thought this was really solid, and I cannot wait to read the next couple of books in the series. I don't know if this is a 4 or 6 issue series, but I'm definitely down to find out what happens to Zatanna and her hero's journey if she comes to grips with what happened in her childhood. She overcomes whatever trauma that happened there, that she uses magic and decides to use it for good, that she stops the bad guys, etc., etc., etc. If you want to check this out, you can get it. It is out this week, July 24th, from DC Comics. There's a link in the show notes if you want to pick this up digitally. A little bit comes back our way for that. So there you go. Zatanna, Bring Down the House #2 from DC Comics. Rodrigo, you've got a comic coming up next week from Silver Sprocket Press. This is a small indie publisher out of San Francisco.
Silver Sprocket, yes.
Yay.
So I looked at Bottoms Up. It is a one-shot. It's a single issue comic. It is $10. It is written and drawn by Barbara Benas. And it's interesting because it takes the form of a cooking blog type article.
Interesting.
And as you guys may know, I mean, I know both of you guys are good cooks and have known for a while, but if you try to get a recipe online, because of the SEO
Yes.
and how much everybody needs it to get their stuff seen, you need to really pad any article that you put on, right?
Yes.
So if you're already
Let me
writing
tell
a
you
long
about
article,
garlic. Once upon a time when I was a little girl, I had garlic all over the place, and it was wonderful. And now the next ingredient is butter. Let me tell you all about butter. Yeah, no, I'm very familiar with this kind of BS kind of writing.
Yeah. I have some thoughts on how cooking blogs specifically could get around that. But it's actually a lot of people just put a link halfway, like early on, and they're like, "Here's
jump to the
just
recipe.
click this to skip to the recipe."
Yeah.
But the thing is, it's terrible on mobile. Anyway, let me get back to this book.
Okay.
No,
it's
obviously we know about this phenomenon. We have opinions about it, which is what makes this comic so good and interesting. So the idea here is this person is like, hey, here's a recipe for tiramisu. And we start reading, and the main character is going to apply for a job as a cook in a fancy place by making this tiramisu. And as we continue to read, we're sort of led into this character's mindscape, and about halfway through, things start going wrong, and then it completely goes off the rails, and it ends up absolutely not where I expected it was going to.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually pretty intense. When I read it earlier today, I was like, "Oh, that was a pretty good idea, good little comic. I'm gonna give it 3 slices of meatloaf for the show." And then I took a nap, and then when I woke up from the nap, I couldn't stop thinking about it. Mm-hmm. And I read it again, and I'm like, actually, really, there's a lot going on here that I feel like I absorbed but didn't think about. First off, writing this in this way and creating this in this way is like a big risk.
Mm-hmm.
It's considering that it is basically doing a called shot at something that we all hate on the internet.
Mm-hmm.
But taking that form as well and risking that, the comic asks us to be like, hey, I'm going to write this in a manner that people hate, but stick with it because I have something to say about it, right? There's a lot going on. It's more blog-like at the beginning, structurally. There's more text. There's like panels that look like ads or links. But as you go, it becomes more comic-like, and at the end, it's basically an abstract piece. Right until the very end, which the last page is just excellent. So I don't want to spoil it too much more. I want to give it 4.5 slices of meatloaf. It's very good. I strongly recommend that if you have your LCS around. I checked. It is distributed by Diamond, so people should be able to get it. But also, Silver Sprocket has their own website.
Right.
And they're a small publisher, so either way is probably good for them.
Yeah.
So yeah, 4.5 slices of meatloaf. Check it out.
All right. Very cool. Yeah, definitely. I saw the review copy come through, and I looked at it, and I was like, "Oh, this is interesting." But yeah, you and I should talk sometime, Rodrigo, about cooking blogs and.
Sure.
Man, definitely not formatted right for mobile devices either. So,
yeah.
Hey, I want to take a moment and thank everyone who supports the show and all the shows in the Major Spoilers Podcast Network. Big thanks go out this week to Christopher Evenstar, who became a new Silver Patron this past week. As a Silver Patron, Christopher has instant access to 4 bonus episodes each month that you can't get anywhere else. I mentioned earlier we were talking about changes in continuity and changes in storyline. And we also talked about digital releases, the Battle of Jakku, so many more things in this week's Major Spoilers Podcast pre-show. It's exclusive over there when you sign up at the silver level, which is only a mere $5 a month. Listen, if you look at, we used to say, go out and for a price of a cup of coffee, you can get a month's worth of entertainment that keeps giving and giving and giving. And somebody said the other day that, if you go to the Starbucks and you get a latte, it's like $7. And then if you give a tip, that's like $10.
Mhm.
And it's like, wow, for way less than a cup of coffee, you can get access and support all the shows that we do for the main feed. You get access up to 4 bonus episodes per month at the silver level. And while everyone else, Matthew, is increasing their prices
Right?
year after year, little bit here, little bit there, little bit there. Oh, you got another nickel? Give me that nickel. Oh, you got $1? We'll increase this by we have not increased our prices in the entire time that we have been doing our Patreon page. $5 is still $5. And what you get at the $5 level is what you're always getting at the $5 level, and sometimes a little bit more than what we promise. Who else would do that? Do you think the big businesses would do that? Yeah, sure. Look at the streaming services, Rodrigo. First, it starts out and says, "Oh, for just $9.99 a month, you can get access to our streaming stuff." And then you blink, and it's $11.99. And you blink again, and it's $17.99.
And you have access to fewer things.
You have access to fewer things. Listen, when you sign up to become a silver patron, $5 a month, you get instant access to hundreds of hours of original content that you have not heard before. Who else is going to do that for you? It's the same stuff over and over again at those streaming services. Every week we're giving you something new. Support independent creators. Become a patron today, just like Christopher did. Thank you, Christopher. By signing up today, patreon.com/major spoilers. And look, I get it. Maybe you can't even afford a cup of coffee, right? Maybe you don't have that extra $5 a month. I'll tell you what, go over there and sign up for free. There's a free tier. You're not going to get access to the bonus content and everything, but you'll get a little bit of stuff, and maybe a little bit more stuff is coming to people who sign up at the free tier. So whether you want to give us a couple of bucks a month, or if you want to just sign up for free, go to your browser right now, patreon.com/major spoilers, and sign up today. We are talking Birds of Prey this week, Fighters by Trade by Gail Simone and Joe Bennett. I think we're doing this one this week because I think next week, or before we're able to sit down and record another Major Spoilers podcast, it's Gail Simone's birthday.
Yay!
So consider this a Gail Simone birthday Birds of Prey episode. And I've got to say, I like Gail Simone a lot. I don't know what she thinks about me, but that doesn't matter because I like Gail Simone's writing, and I really, really, really like, even though she's done a lot of really great stuff, I still think her run on Birds of Prey is one of my favorite runs of comics in a long, long time. Because who was it that created the Birds of Prey? What's his name, Matthew?
Chuck Dixon?
Yeah, Chuck Dixon. Chuck Dixon basically created Oracle, Huntress, and Black Canary. But when Gail Simone gets her hands on it, she expands that family to supersize. Booster Gold and Blue Beetle are technically part of the Birds of Prey. You have the 2 bodyguards that are running around with Huntress in this volume. That are part of the Birds of Prey. You got that crazy kid Jimmy or whatever his name is, the Creepazoid that slept with Huntress. He's kind of part of the Birds of Prey. So you kind of get just this really big group of people. Zinda as part of the Birds of Prey, and I really, yeah, so do I. But she was a part of the Blackhawks, back in the day, time travel shenanigans. Wildcat is in this.
Wildcat is very in this.
Yeah, he is.
Wildcat is all over this one.
And so that's why I think if you were to ask me what is a great run of Gail Simone, it is everything she did with Birds of Prey. Now, I may have a little misgivings about this particular arc. I don't even know. Somebody said that this was one of the better Birds of Prey stories. I know that this is a divisive story arc for many people.
Really?
Yeah, because this is the story. So for those of you that don't remember, once upon a time, there was a man who said, "Cripple that B word." And so they shot Batgirl in the spine and they put her in a wheelchair and didn't make her Batgirl anymore. And so she became a computer whiz, and she became Oracle, this mysterious presence on the web that would direct people and resources to places that had crime. And we discovered that is indeed Barbara Gordon. And we find out in this volume, which is kind of a little bits and pieces of Infinite Crisis are starting to also appear in this storyline. But one of the things that we discover in this story arc is that Oracle / Barbara Gordon has a mass growing on her body that is a leftover of Queen Brainiac. What was her name?
Brainiac. I want to say it was Brainiac 13, but I don't remember.
Well, and I couldn't remember. What's the queen of the Brainiac queen called? I forget. But whatever that is, yes, there is a part of Brainiac 13 in her body that's growing. And so she has to have an emergency procedure done. And of course, Dr. Midnight is performing the procedure, and Superman is there to monitor. And it's all being funded by Bruce Wayne, and all these superheroes are showing up. And poor Jim Gordon is like, what is going on? Who is this person? Why are all these people coming to my daughter's aid? And then they remove the tumor or the lesion or whatever it is, the technovirus. And Oracle wakes up, and Barbara miraculously has the use of her legs again. And a lot of people really, really hated that. So, yeah, I would say that that's a little divisive. Wouldn't you agree, Matthew? We were talking about this, I think, in pre-show or somewhere else.
This is not the point that I was talking about.
Oh, okay. You're talking about there's another part. Yeah.
Barbara doesn't actually get full use of her limbs back until DC Rebirth in about 2015, 2016.
She basically has it because she's up moving around out of the wheelchair in this. There's the scene with her in the shower standing up.
Is she?
I think so, yeah.
I don't recall that. I don't know. I know
that she has her little chair in the
okay. All right.
shower.
Yeah, at the very end of this trade is where, or almost the very end of this trade. Maybe it's the end of the first arc where she's like, I can feel my toes again.
Yeah.
My toes. Yeah. She does not stop using her chair at this point. She remains Oracle.
Wait. Does she? I can't remember what happens afterwards. Is she keeping the fact that she can use her legs secret? Because I remember there was a whole thing where she was like, oh, do I tell people that I have this, or do I let people be drawn in because they think I am someone they can take advantage of, and that's my superpower? Can't remember how that went after.
I feel like you are conflating two things that happened like 10 years apart. But
it could be. I mean, you got to remember, the Birds of Prey disappeared for a long time, plus there was this whole thing called Infinite Crisis, which really monkeyed up everything.
Oh,
and a lot of people really hated that because this we see Brother Eye appearing in this trade a couple of times, references to Brother Eye popping up. And so we know shortly after this, after the events of this trade, there is the whole let's kill Maxwell Lord and twist his head off by Wonder Woman. And the all
there
of
are
that stuff.
Explicit references to searching for Booster searching for Blue Beetle, and Blue Beetle at this point is in fact dead at Max Lord's hands.
Yeah.
This takes place after Countdown to Infinite Crisis started, but before the Infinite Crisis really kicks in.
Yeah. So there's that too, and then of course there's a calculator pops up in here as well, which is Matthew's favorite character apparently.
I hate the calculator so much. Ugh. Hate him.
But the main, to me, the main story is the one that opens it up, where Black Canary and Wildcat are going to Singapore. Yeah, I can't remember where they go to, but they are essentially figuring out that they are going to pull an end around on one of the biggest drug lords in the world by buying up all of his drugs and then leaving his buyers high and dry and leaving him high and dry, so that essentially he goes out of business. And so there's some stuff between Black Canary and Wildcat. She's known him her entire life. He's known her for her entire life. There's some, what are they called? The Zodiac fighters show up. There's some...
the 12 brothers.
Yeah, the 12 brothers. There's some like... Mortal Kombat stuff that goes on, not without the supernatural stuff. And then
the Mortal Kombat stuff is kind of my favorite because this is really where Gail took Black Canary, who for a long time was she did judo, and made her one of the most dangerous hand-to-hand fighters in the DC universe. And I really love the point where she's fighting Rabbit, and she's not only just using her skills, but using her psychology and using his weaknesses against him. And at a certain point, they're just kicking and they're doing all of the cool things. And then all of a sudden you see her just get off a big wildcat roundhouse to the face. I'm just like, oh, right. This woman was trained by the entire Justice League since she was
a little girl.
child.
Yeah.
That's nice.
Yeah, no, I like that as well. And that's one of the things that I like too, is that while Simone continues to add characters that are scattered throughout the DC universe and she makes it make sense, right? Mm-hmm. That Black Canary's mother was part of the Justice Society, so she was always growing up around those people. Of course they would train her. Of course they would teach her things. Of course they would take her under their wings, so to speak. So I dig that. And then I also dig the Huntress kind of redemption arc story where, Batman has told her since the appearance of Huntress in the Huntress miniseries from years prior, stop doing this. You can't be a vigilante. Hypocrisy runs wild.
Right.
And she's, she is the daughter of this crime lord, and she is trying to take the crime families down for what they did, not only to her father, but also what they're doing to Gotham. And her whole thing is, she comes into the mafia family, and she wants to use her influence to make the mafia a lot of money. But at the same time, she's also buying all the drugs from Black Canary, or the drugs are not going to be available on the street. And so they're doing some double cross stuff. And it turns out that she was gathering information to turn over to Batman, but information that Batman didn't even have. So she gets a really cool redemption arc in this as well. So I don't know. There are some parts where it gets a little weird, but for the most part, I dig this era of Birds of Prey. Rodrigo, you've been quiet. I haven't given you a chance to talk, but what are some thoughts that you have on Birds of Prey during this time period? Were you reading them at all?
No, I completely missed this book when it was coming out. I guess the very first thought I had while I was reading this is, as you guys may know, I never look at the creative team before getting into a book. Mm-hmm. And that's not so much me being like, oh, I want to approach this with a clear mind. It's not so much that as I just don't think to. I'm just like, comics.
Yeah, that's how I am a lot of the time too.
So I start reading it, and first off, I know that it's a Birds of Prey book. And then I just start reading the dialogue, and I'm like, oh, this is a Gail Simone book. And, not in a bad way. I'm like, she just has a very specific way in which characters talk, and the way that they quip to each other. So, check the front. I'm like, oh yeah, that is a Gail Simone book. So that is nice, definitely, to be like, okay, well, obviously Gail Simone is a good writer, and she both has experience writing these characters and enjoys writing these characters. So going in with that, it makes it a little bit of like, I spend less time trying to figure out the comic and the themes of it and everything else, because I'm like, well, I already know kind of what she's going for with this, and I think that helped the reading experience. Although, I don't know, maybe approaching it with like a little bit less of an expectation would have maybe been better.
Like, what expectation did you have?
I'm reading this and I'm like, okay, so the team's gonna get back together. Somebody is going to like get hit really hard in the face with something made of glass. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I don't remember if exactly that happened, but something similar definitely happens. And also there's going to be a lot of characters, and there's going to be a lot of like scenes that don't seem to necessarily match up until they do, right? Until we get brought around. So it definitely, I gave it a lot more leeway as far as that, because I'm like, well, this is going somewhere. And also the grace of like, this is ongoing comics, right? This is a monthly title. the last time we read a Birds of Prey title, there was at least one storyline in that started before the volume that we were reading and ended after. So all of the scenes from that storyline are like just suspended in space. The character barely interacts with anybody else, just has some problems over there, and then like somebody shows up and like kidnaps him and like barely has any contact with the rest of the characters, right? And I was like, okay, obviously that was gonna resolve later, but we don't see it. In this, that's actually a lot tighter. Like most of the things that we see resolve within the pages of this specific volume.
Yeah, I kind of, this is like, if not the end, very close to the end of her run on the series, just because of everything that's changing with the Infinite Crisis. I kind of wish I could have found a volume, or someone would have recommended a volume that was maybe 2 trades before this, like right around the time when Ted Kord is brought on. I think was peak Birds of Prey. I don't know if you would consider this peak Birds of Prey. I think this is on, we've crested the peak in my opinion for this trade. It's still really good. Don't get me wrong. But I think when Booster joined the club, that was like when it was like, what is going to happen next? This is wild and crazy.
This is peak Birds of Prey for me.
Okay.
Going past this volume into issue 100, actually, issue 100 is one of the most satisfying issues of comics I've ever read, to be honest. But coming out of this arc is where the team goes to Russia and accidentally resurrects Ice from the dead.
Right.
And then Spy Smasher shows up, and Spy Smasher spends a whole year torturing everybody. And then in issue 100, Spy Smasher tries to pull rank on Batgirl, and every single person who had ever been a bird of prey, including Richard Dragon, who nobody really even talked to, showed up and informed Spy Smasher that she would not be doing any such thing. And if she did, they would find very small bits of her all over the universe.
I like Richard Dragon and Speedy showing up here. No, not Speedy.
Yeah.
Is this Speedy? No, it's not
Connor
Speedy.
Hawk.
It's Connor
Hawk, Green Arrow.
Yeah. Shows up, and then, the Zodiac brothers are all like, wait a minute, is that Richard Dragon over there? Wait, is that Connor Hawk? Ah, crap, and it's just like, those are pretty cool moments in this book.
Watch his front kick. I saw him in a monastery in Tibet.
Yeah.
That's one of the nice things about reading a Gail Simone book in the DC universe is that, like, we know that certain superheroes are off limits to write, right? Not that she would want to, but although he makes a cameo, Superman is not going to be in the Birds of Prey, right? Not an ongoing character. Wonder Woman's not going to be in it. Batman's not going to be in it. Although again, some cameos here. But like, she doesn't want that. She's like, probably like, beep, boop, beep, beep, beep. Hey, that like other Green Lantern looking guy, are you guys doing anything with? And like the editor's like, who? And she's like, perfect, I'll call you later. Right? Like, I picture a lot of that going on where she's like, hey, I want to write this whole thing around Catman. That's not in this comic, but it's in another comic.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like, I'm sure the editor's like, fine. Go for it.
Catman, yeah, sure, whatever. And then turns him into a great character.
Sure.
I will say this. This is the volume that has the best slow burn running gag in Birds of Prey history. It actually starts before this. Savant and Creote are a couple. And at this point, they hadn't necessarily come out as a couple, but it's very clear throughout this whole volume that Creote is in love with Savant. Anytime Savant gets hurt, Creote goes absolutely nuts. But Zinda has this crush on Creote because he's this great, big, kind of manly man like she remembers from the 40s. And we get to the point where finally she shoots her shot, she fails, and the other birds of prey get in the ship. There's something we have to tell you about Creote. And she's like, oh, Lord Almighty, the man's fancy. And I'm like, yes, that's exactly what it is. But we saw this over just like several different arcs. And finally, the other shoe dropped. I love that bit. For me, Lady Blackhawk makes every issue of Birds of Prey that she's in better.
Yeah.
far as
Okay.
I'm concerned, just because there's actually one where Spy Smasher tries to fire her, and she looks at Spy Smasher and says, "I knew your grandpa, the real Spy Smasher, and you can't fire me." And she turns and starts to walk away across the Siberian tundra, and Spy Smasher is like, "You're going to freeze to death and die." And she basically just gives her the finger and keeps walking.
Yeah.
I'm like,
That's
yes.
not in this volume, but yeah.
Yeah, it's in the next volume, but it's,
yeah.
it's so
What did you guys think of Oracle Barbara coming out to her dad?
well past the time, honestly.
Yeah, it seemed it seemed like a bit of a chore. It's like, okay, if we're gonna like keep writing this, he has to know, right?
Yeah.
And so you get into this thing where, um, you guys remember Voltron Legendary Defender, or was it
Mhm.
Legendary Defender? The more recent one, the Netflix one.
Yeah.
So in that one, Pidge, spoiler alert, is a girl. She just pretends to be a boy because she's basically undercover.
Right.
And when Lance finally figures out that Pidge is a girl, everybody, literally everybody else on the team is like, "Oh yeah, I already knew that. I figured it out a long time ago." I was like, "I figured it out, blah blah blah," and it like really deflates the surprise. It just
Mhm.
makes Lance seem like a bigger dork than he is,
Mm.
and that's how the scene felt to me, where it's like the bigger deal is that she was ever Batgirl, but he had already figured that out.
Right.
And then
Right.
next up is, and also I've been coordinating the movements of all of these
The superheroes.
extra legal vigilantes.
Yeah.
And obviously Gordon is like, extra legal vigilantes, I love those, right?
I mean,
Obviously.
I think the weirdest part. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So it's like that felt like a moment that should have happened 10 years ago.
I agree that the Batgirl reveal should have happened years ago. When Gordon finds out she's Oracle, and then he sits and participates in, as a witness, her running an operation, at that point my mind is like, oh my God, no, this is bad. This is really bad. He cannot be here for this, because this is going to throw out every case he has ever worked on, and creates a big conundrum for him that he just seems to brush away. Like, it's no big deal. I know that you're Oracle and that you're doing these things that are technically outside of the law. And so therefore,
Right.
any time that I come and arrest somebody that you have, pulled your strings to take down, and I have to clean up the mess, then that case is automatically thrown out. None of that is brought up here. And it should have been brought up as a big, red flag of, I'm not sure you should be doing that.
It's getting into the legal system.
No, I
in
know.
the DC universe, it's just
just in
it's like
anything. We were talking about
nothing
the
that
Sentinels
Batman
earlier.
ever does should be admissible, right?
Yeah.
In a sane world.
Yeah.
And
importantly-
especially because we've looked at other comics where they say, what if this was handled a little bit more realistically, right? Regardless of how realistic the other comic is, because I think, for example, the Tick,
Mhm.
the Tick Amazon series has a good one about the trope of that law that allows superheroes to be superheroes.
Mhm.
And it's like, that can't exist in the DC universe. It simply can't. We just have to brush it aside.
Yeah. That's one of the things that always goes through my mind, because Jim Gordon is always like, I want to follow the law as much as possible. Sure, I'm going to be working with a vigilante, but I'm still, the chief of police, and there's these rules. And I just think that when you find out your daughter is participating in this, and you're witnessing an operation, that really puts him in a bad position, is all I'm saying. Is it, if somebody were to challenge him, maybe his ex-wife were to challenge him for chief of police, that could put him in a bad position. Which, when does she do that? Is that coming up in this arc, where, not in this particular Birds of Prey arc, but doesn't his ex-wife become chief of police, and he's kind of demoted?
That's quite a ways down the line.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, this is earlier than you're thinking, I think. But
Yeah.
the thing about it, and the thing that always throws me about that moment where she shows him her suit and he says, "Well, that part I knew," is the unspoken part of, if you know that, James Gordon, then you are probably fully aware of who Batman is.
There's a moment
And
where
there's always
Yeah.
that question in the back of my head, and you get to the point where, for me, in my head canon, Gordon knows who Batman is.
yeah, I think so. And
He's always known who Batman, who Nightwing, who all of these people
there's
are.
a panel.
They want to have their identity, and he lets them,
Yeah.
but he
There's
knows who they are.
There's a panel where they're in the Justice Society headquarters, and Dr. Midnight is getting ready to perform the operation on Barbara. And I forget who it is. Power Girl and somebody else are talking about who is this person that they brought in to do the operation, and why are all these important people showing up to take care of her? And Superman's hauling in this very special piece of equipment, and Dr. Midnight is there. And then somebody mentions, who's paying for all of this? And we see, I think, if I remember correctly, Jim Gordon looks out the window and it's a shot of Batman on the roof across the street. And so in my mind,
that's all funded by Bruce Wayne.
Yeah. So,
it's actually,
so that's
it's Dr. Midnight who's looking out the window, and he's our point of view character. And Midnight is thinking, who's paying for all of this? I have my suspicions. And then we see a shadow with the bat cowl in it.
Because I was thinking it was Gordon that was looking out the window. And when that line is being said, and it's like, oh, of course he knows that. He doesn't know that Batman is rich. He knows that Batman is Bruce Wayne, and Bruce Wayne is rich. And so he's funding that. So, yeah, I agree with you that I think that probably if Jim Gordon is the great detective that everyone claims him to be, he probably knows who Batman is and has for a good decade. Probably since year one, since that year one series.
He would have to. And I feel like there's kind of, you have not just suspension of disbelief. I mean, Stephen and I have had that discussion tonight on this.
You kind of have to.
Yeah. But you also have that moment of Jim Gordon came to a Gotham City that was completely corrupt and has done things that are not technically legal because of the extreme corruption in Gotham. Now it's been sort of cleaned up. It's better. There's a Batman. They've
already been through an earthquake, so they know where they stand.
Don't even bring up Contagion. Oh my God, I'm just gonna cry. But yeah, they've been through some shiz. Okay, and they have come to a point where I feel like all that Gordon saw of that operation really was they're using these cameras that are apparently actual Gotham police cameras. And then she's like, make sure that you don't let Creote touch the bad guys if they hurt Savant. And she's just like, we don't kill. He will kill every one of them. Keep him out of the way. And Gordon is just like, you have standards. But I also feel like if Jim Gordon were to work arm in arm with Batman, and later on he becomes Batman in 2016 for about an hour and a half. But more importantly, if he had that chance to be part of Oracle's team, I honestly think he'd do it. I just don't think that the story would survive because of the strange role that Jim Gordon has to kind of occupy in the Batman universe.
Yeah.
Because he has to be a police officer. And we all kind of think we know what a police officer has to be. But if he's actually being a straight by the book police officer, then none of the Batman stories can happen. Because he will literally, anytime Batman shows his face, he will have people out there,
Probably year one or year two. Probably year two is when he figures out, because that's when he comes in and he's like, I must arrest the Batman. And then by the time you're done with that arc, he's like, I think I'm going to have to work with this guy. And he's probably at that point figured it out. So
Batman does fine. Yes.
Bottom line for me is this is the era of DC where I was reading everything DC put out. The weirdest title that they put out, I was reading it. This was the era when I was spending, $500 a month on comic books, just buying everything and reading through everything and devouring everything. Now I couldn't get everything, but pretty close to everything. And it was a good time. I love these stories. I really enjoyed what was going on during this time period. And these are one of those times where I can go back and revisit these comics anytime I want. I don't want DC to return back to this era and turn back the clock. I do like a lot of the characters that came out of this time period. The spoiler character I think is great. Cassandra Cain came out during this era, which I think is great. And of course, I loved reading Birds of Prey. So if you're going to pick up Birds of Prey, this one's pretty deep. You need to know your stuff before you jump in here. But this is good stuff. I really enjoyed it. It's not the peak for me, but it is still very, very good stuff. And so I would say if you're a DC fan of this era, you need to read Birds of Prey, Fighters by Trade. Matthew, final thoughts from you.
This is 2006, and 2006 is a troubling era of DC for me. It's very brutal and very dark, and a lot of it is just plain bad. But Birds of Prey managed to be a light in and among that darkness, because as we see throughout this, we're seeing bits of Infinite Crisis. We're seeing the secret society in play. And if there is ever a more destructive idea to the DC universe than the secret society, I have yet to hear about it. But it also gives us moments like, okay, here's the Calculator who fancies himself to be the evil version of Oracle. Can he pull it off? Puts Black Canary in a situation where she has to prove her actual skills as a martial artist and pulls it off. And so I feel like the real struggle here, this is just about peak Birds of Prey for me. The real struggle is, if you have never read Birds of Prey, as hard as it is for me to say that, because this is one of my favorite arcs, you probably don't want to start here. But if you have an idea of Birds of Prey, or if you already love Gail's work and are willing to do a little bit of time on the wiki every time a new person walks in and says, "Hi there," then yeah, this is definitely worth picking up.
Rodrigo, final thoughts from you.
Some slight superficial problems where I'm concerned. Characters spend a lot of time fighting and beating up Asian people, and I don't think there's ever an Asian person on the team, and there won't be until like 2020 when Richard Dragon is turned into an Asian man in the Batman cartoon. But again, that's kind of a visual thing. It's not the best. Another issue is like potential ableist setup and magically starting to give Oracle the ability to walk, right? Not through a normal procedure, but through like some weird space magic. So that's a bit of, those two are a bit of a concern, but they're kind of, in the end, they're both sort of like minor aspects of this. It's kind of all about the girls getting back together, and that was enjoyable. So I would definitely, this is a borrow for me.
All right, cool. All right. Thank you, everybody, for checking us out this week. If you found value on the show, we'd love for you to join us on our Patreon page, where you can find even more fun, including the Major Spoilers Podcast pre-show, where we ask, if you had a mutant ability, what would it be that would cause the Sentinels to come after you? You can check it out right now. Patreon.com/Major Spoilers. Next week on the show, That Texas Blood Volume 3. Why? Because it's a fifth week, and why not? And, well, also because we know that you love comics, and we do too. Take care.
Fat Dick's Ray Vision of a Superman. I could save a few bucks and stand around and read through the covers of the comics on the stand. But although every other page would be backwards, I suppose I could still read the evens and the odds. Well, I don't know. Guess I haven't thought this all the way through. Plus, as soon as the comic book store guy knew, they kicked my butt out on the corner. What a major spoiler. What a major spoiler. Think about a better way. If I was hulking green or gray, I could just bust through that brick wall, take their comic books away. But then the little meat would deal with all the tanks and bombs and guns. Have you ever tried to read a series with all that going on? Guess I need to rethink this plan. How would I back and board my comics with such huge hands? Guess I already told ya. What a major spoiler. What a major spoiler. Yeah, yeah, yeah. What a major spoiler. I'm stark raving rich like a man of iron. Might not be surprised to find that I might actually have the heart cold to follow an entire storyline. But would I really even need to read up on all those escapades? I mean, who needs such distractions when your sister's such a babe? But the downside is such a beast, being shot up in a fun, be in the Middle East with a gang sign throwing soldier. What a major spoiler! What a major spoiler! Yeah, yeah, yeah! What a major spoiler! Whoa, 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 whoa! What a major spoiler!
This podcast is copyright 2024 by Major Spoilers Entertainment, LLC.